Hey guys, my name is Stu, and I just wanted to offer a word of encouragement, as I know that all of you are Trek alum, and I am also a Trek alum. I came here in 2020 during the middle of COVID, and was here for sexual addiction and unfaithfulness to my wife. And I was also a pastor on staff at a large church here in Atlanta, and was working here for almost 9 years or 8 years when I came off staff, and when I confessed things to my wife, and when I ended up here at HopeQuest, the place that none of us wanted to end up, but we're also grateful that we did. It changed my life, as I know it changed so many of your lives, and it was the work that I needed to do. But I remember towards the end of it, I was terrified about what going home was going to look like. I actually experienced a lot of anxiety walking up and down this road here at HopeQuest, praying to God, kind of going on that walk that Pastor B all encourages us to go on. And I remember just feeling a lot of anxiety around it. Thankfully, Phil was helpful, and my counselor, and he said, "Hey, are you proud of what you did when you were here?" And I said, "Yes, I'm proud of what I did." He's like, "Do you think most men would come here?" And I said, "No." He's like, "So let's reframe that a lot of men wouldn't do the work that you did, and you should be proud of that." And so I really did take that to heart and carried that home. But at the same time, I came home on a Friday, as we all do, went into work on Monday, and had a meeting with the leadership team, and then the HR person was in there, which is never a good sign, right? So when the HR person is in there, and the leadership team asked for me to share my story, and they had already made a decision that they were gonna pull me out of my job, and but they wanted to hear my story, and so I shared it with them. And I shared from a place not of shame and embarrassment, but thankfully, because of my conversation with Phil, I shared with a place of really honoring the church, but also being really proud, and really proud of the work that I'd done, and really confessing that I had a lot of regret, but I knew that going to HopeQuest was the wisest thing that I'd ever done as a husband, and as a dad, and as a person. The reality is, they looked at me and they said, "Hey, you know what, you're right. So we're gonna take you out of this role, but go home, and we're gonna see what we can figure out." And I ended up getting to come back into a different role. And I know some people don't get to go back into a certain job, but I came back into a role. But to be honest with you, it was not a role that I wanted at all. And it was not a role that I felt like was in my sweet spot. And there were many, many days of discouragement in that role, where I felt like, why am I here? Like, this is not what I used to enjoy. This isn't what I love to do. But I stayed faithful with my story. I shared my story with other staff members. I was not ashamed of it. I was just honest about it. And I just chose to take one day at a time at work. And I watched God during that season where there wasn't quite as much pressure on me to perform in ministry. It was this kind of a role behind the scenes, but I watched God restore my marriage during that time. I watched God restore some things with my kids, and I watched God work on my heart to continue to heal me after HopeQuest. And fast forward, after about 2.5 years of doing that job, it came time to leave the church. My wife and I got an opportunity to move. And so I went to my boss and I said, "Hey, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to come back after being at HopeQuest." And it was, but I've got this, it's time for me and my family to move. And I was thinking like, no big deal. But at my last meeting, she invited, there were like 50 people there to come and pray over me. And I heard these prayers of where God had used me in the last 2 years with dozens and dozens of pastors who were on staff. And they felt like a couple of them said, "Hey, Stu has been a man that I look up to. Stu is a man that's authentic. Stu is someone that I admire." And I heard that over and over and over again. And in that moment, what I realized that in these last 2.5 years, even though I didn't love what I was doing anymore, God was working more powerfully than he had the first 8 years in a job that I thought that I loved. that God was working in these days. So I don't know if you're out there and you left HopeQuest and you're in a job that you don't like, or you're in a situation that you don't like, or your marriage didn't work out, or whatever the case is, and you feel like God is done with you. I just want to remind you that God is working in way bigger ways than you could possibly imagine, because that's who He is. And if you will just take your recovery and do one day at a time, I just pray that you realize that God is working, and don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged in the season. And that's why we need community, right? That's why you need other men around you that are reminding you that, hey, God is working. And so that's my encouragement to you, because I forgot that, and God continues to remind me that He is working even when we don't realize it.